career and my recording career have certainly affected each other, but they've evolved fairly separately from one another. You know, the first 4 records went from being solo acoustic on Undertones up to, you know, more full-blown production on Hard-Headed Fool. But during that time, I still toured for the most part as a solo acoustic act. I had a friend of mine named Jason Kinney playing guitar with me on a lot of those shows. But when people came to the show, they didn't necessarily hear what was on the record, and that didn't bother me because I really wanted to evolve on stage at my own pace, much like I had at the studio, and I wasn't interested in running out and hiring a big band. But after I released Hard-Headed Fool, I went through a change on the road and started touring as a 3-piece with a bass player named Rob Henson and a drummer named Marcus Petruska. And we became a really tight-knit trio. It really was a time where I had to stretch my legs musically. It was my first time playing with a rhythm section, and it took me to a new level as a guitar player. After we'd been out playing together for about a year, I really felt like our chemistry was special. So I decided to do a live album from one of my favorite places in the world to play, which was the Georgia Theater. We had a Friday and a Saturday night booked there. Both shows were sold out. I had put up the money to have an audio truck come out to get recordings of what was happening on stage. The first night didn't go very well. There was a lot of feedback coming from the front of house, so the feedback bled through the microphones that we had on stage that were going to the audio truck. So that meant that we had a lot of really great performances that were sort of ruined. And I remember the next day going back and listening to some of the tracks from the first night, thinking, oh no, I don't think we got very much from the first night. And that put a lot of pressure on me for the second night. Well, later that same afternoon, my oldest son, Aiden, was running a high fever. He'd been sick for a few days. He had to go to the doctor. They ended up admitting him to the hospital in Athens, and he had pneumonia. So the rest of that day was spent in the hospital with him, watching him get IVs. And for those of you that have had sick kids, that's a real downer. I went straight from the hospital to the Georgia Theater to try to play a show. The show must go on, and needless to say, my mind wasn't on music, so we didn't have a lot of great performances that we could keep from that night either. So the result of all that ended up being outtakes from the Georgia Theater, because all we were really able to salvage was 5 or 6 songs that I think they turned out all right. I don't think they went as far as I'd hoped as far as capturing what happened on stage with us every night. But the record was the first time that I was able to release a recording of Popo. Up until then, there were a lot of underground recordings going around that people had shared, but that's the first time that I'd actually released a recording of it. It was the first time we had released a song like Party, which is now a staple at every show. Everybody chants back at us. And it was the first time where I think people got at least a little taste of the magic that was happening between Rob and Marcus and myself. And I'm glad that we do have a sort of a record of that, and I'll always look back on it fondly, and I'll never be able to listen to it without thinking of the great relationship we forged over the 6 years we were out touring together.